Hello, Second Act Success Podcast listeners. I'm Jen Walton, host of the Girls Who Chase podcast, where we elevate and amplify the stories of women in the storm chasing, weather, and meteorology universe. I myself am in my second act. I left a full-time communications leadership career to pursue my dream of becoming a successful storm chaser and landscape photographer, pursuing the epic beasts that roam the plains and traveling the world in search of the northern lights, volcanoes, and other amazing natural phenomena to capture. The vision of Girls Who Chase is a world where girls and women know they can do anything and be anything they want, and that absolutely includes pivoting to the life of your dreams in a second act. We talk about that and more on the podcast, which you can find on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. You can also check us out and get involved at girlswhochase.com. Now, back to Shannon Russell, your host of today's amazing Second Act Success episode.
Are you at a crossroads in your career or in life? Well, don't worry, because life's next chapter is waiting. This is the Second Act Success podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Russell. I'm a television producer, turned boy mom, turned business owner, podcaster, and career coach. If you are looking to start a new career or begin a fresh chapter in life, then get ready to be inspired with stories of women who have done just that. We will share advice and offer steps you can take to help figure out what your true calling in life really is. It is time to shine, so let's turn the page and get started. Welcome to Second Act Success. Hey friend, think you're ready to start a second act? I created a freebie that will help. It's my second act blueprint with 5 questions that you should ask yourself before you make this massive decision. To check it out, go to secondactsuccess.co and download the second act blueprint today. Now it's on to the episode. Gina Riley graduated with a communications degree, and she got her master's in the unique field of whole systems design. She longed for an executive leadership role in human resources, developing programs. After achieving that goal, she took 15 years off to be a stay-at-home mom. Gina also survived breast cancer during these years, and when it came time to going back to work, she wanted to make a change in her career. Gina decided to help others with their life transitions by becoming a coach and having her own consulting business. This is Gina Riley and her success story. Gina, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I am awesome today. Super excited to chat with you.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. Let's talk about where you went to school and kind of where your career started.
Yeah, the origin story.
Yes.
Went to school at Arizona State, originally from Arizona, and kind of had the idea at the age of like 15, 16 for my career path. I knew I wanted to go into like some kind of personal development or training and development. But back at that time, it wasn't very well defined out in the universe. This is before some of our modern day public speakers and personal development gurus were really huge, like Tony Robbins or someone like that. Yeah. So I studied communication, which was the study of interpersonal, intercultural, organizational communication, because I thought that would be a good base to help other people communicate better in the future.
I was a communications major, but more on the broadcast journalism side. So right there with you. But yeah, it can be used for so many things.
Absolutely.
Your master's that you went on to get is really interesting to me. Can you tell us about your master's?
Whole systems design, which people can make it what they want to. I was a part of a cohort of 40 people, and there were all walks of life there. There were teachers, there were HR leaders, engineers. And what I got out of it was an approach to consulting and a viewpoint on the world where we take into consideration whole systems, all the moving parts that make an organism or an organization come to life. That's the way that I think. And it made a lot of sense to me. And then I apply that now with what I do today with my career coaching.
So interesting. So when did you go for your master's? Was it right after undergrad or?
It was not. I actually went into the workforce for about 10 years. I worked for Intel here in Oregon. I started off in staffing and did recruiting. And what I wanted to do was ultimately get into training and develop programs. But one of the segues was to be an HR business partner. And at that time, you had to have a master's degree to be a partner to one of the major division leaders, et cetera. So I felt like I had to go back and get a master's. And I got very lucky. I was able to work on it at the same time my husband was on assignment in England. So for that year and a half, we lived in England, but I was able to commute to Seattle, work on my degree. And by the time we were done, I came back and I landed that job for that HR business partnership with one of the top upcoming VPs at that time. So I got to be a partner to a whole business unit and be their guide when it came to HR.
Wow. So was it everything that you thought, or was it a little different once you got into the role?
Oh gosh. In a role like that, there's fun parts of the job and then there's not fun parts of the job. The not fun parts are when you have to deal with employee relations issues. You're consulting with your senior leader and they have an employee that's either got misbehavior or some kind of issue where you're coaching and guiding and being that person. And sometimes you have to terminate people. That is not fun. I prefer not to have to do that. And some of the stories that some of us HR people can tell and make your hair curl, like people really do that on the job. But the fun stuff was consulting and helping guide the leaders in their approaches with their teams, team development, and then their just general organization development. And there's a lot of gritty work to do. At a company like Intel and many others, there's constant reorganizations. So that's where that whole systems lens comes in to really be very helpful and effective when you're helping a leader who's mired down in their details with like looking at bigger picture concepts in order to move people and their teams through change so that they don't lose them. So people don't leave.
Right, because you often leave a job if your manager, your management is not working the way that you like to work.
Yes, the manager's one of the number one reasons people leave. I know I have. I'm sure
yes,
you
yes.
have too.
Yes, absolutely. So you were well versed in being able to deal with all of that. So that master's really kind of served you well, it sounds like.
It really did. It does to this day. And sometimes the thing that some people forget when they contemplate getting a degree is sometimes it's the network that you develop when you go and get those degrees, whether that's at a, highly regarded institution or not. I wasn't at Harvard or Stanford getting it, but I still created a network around me that was supportive and helpful and, people that you can go back to collaborate with in the future.
Isn't that interesting since we've gotten into the world of the internet and all of that, because I'm sure our parents went to school with people and then never saw them again because there was no way to connect. And we're so lucky to be able to connect with people on so many different platforms and really utilize people in our classes during college or people that we meet at any job and know that we can take them with us throughout our transitions.
It's absolutely true. I actually, I've got one of my clients just got out of an 8-week, I think it was an 8-week executive program at Harvard, and he came out with 162 new connections all around the world, right? And so he can immediately, for his job search purposes, leverage new relationships to see if he can uncover opportunities in that, what we call the hidden job market, which is not hidden jobs hiding in the corner. It's jobs that haven't really come to the market yet. They're just discussing it in the boardroom. That's going to be one of his tactics, is leveraging that network.
That's a huge network to start with when just coming out of a program. Wow.
So cool.
So you're running this department at Intel and you're in this job that you wanted. And tell me what happened next.
I finally landed the job I was gunning for from age 16, was in the training and development arm of this larger organization. I was so thrilled and I had the best manager. I was so excited. That is where we have a turning point. I have baby number 2, and like you, I have 2 sons. Mm-hmm. And my husband was working at Intel at the time. And at a company like Intel with 2 type A personalities, working those very, very long hours, we started to get into arguments about, can you go pick up the baby? I have to meet with my VP. Well, I have to meet with my VP. And so it didn't make sense. I wasn't going to be able to sustain that type A driver now with 2 little life forms to look after, mm-hmm. and still be a nice person. So we were very lucky that we could afford for me to be home. And this is where things really changed for me. I stayed home for 15 years.
That's a big decision. You have this job that you've been working so hard for. Tell me about making that decision.
I cannot say that I did that with excitement. I was excited to have my children as, a woman coming into my own, getting that degree that I absolutely had to have. They wouldn't move me into the jobs that I wanted until I had it. And I finally got there. I'd barely been there. It was not easy, but I also knew I couldn't do both and still be an effective parent. Turns out you don't know what gifts you're going to get with your children. You don't know if they're going to be challenging people. And for me, the choice was not only clear, it became clearer over time when I was at home, and I could see as my children changed over time what they needed in me for them to become successful people.
That's a really good point, because you just think it's always, as much as you're guiding them and it's all about them, it's just a hard transition to say, okay, I'm going to take this time off. In a big span, 15 years, that's their adolescence.
I can definitely say I was not at home dreaming about being a stay-at-home parent at any point in my lifetime. I was never thinking that, but I also didn't have a master plan. The only thing I had in my mind was like, I wanted to kind of be like these amazing personal development gurus and public speakers. After I had kids, that ideal changed. But what I found through those 15 years at home were different outlets for my desire to like sort of give and to help move other systems along. So of course I was involved with my kids' schools. I found my way into different kinds of projects and programs. I was on the PTO, the high school, helping with the auctions and things like that, helping with larger district-wide initiatives, putting my hat in the ring for that. So I was doing things, but I wasn't necessarily scratching the itch of like true program development and really doing what I knew I could do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard not to use those skills that you've nourished for so long. But at least you were out there doing it, and you were doing everything you could while being there for your kids and being the mom that you ultimately wanted to be. And it's hard for so many of our listeners, I'm sure, of having two parents, both working, and the hours are long, especially pre-COVID. I mean, now I feel like there's more flexibility in the world. But same thing with me and my husband working. We were both television producers, traveling, working late. I mean, there's just no such thing as a 9-to-5 in that industry. I was the one who had to give it up or wanted to give it up for the kids to be the mom that I wanted to be. It's really cool that up until that point, you landed the job that you wanted, and now you get to be home with your boys.
It was hard work. And so for parents who have worked outside of the home and not had that much time with their kids day to day, they don't know. They really don't know. It's a massive juggling act. And to do it with any sense of grace and have your kids like you in some way, it's a lot of work.
I'm curious as to what spurred you wanting to get back into the workforce.
I was diagnosed with breast cancer when my oldest was about a sophomore in high school. My younger was about 8th grade. So that was a turning point. I was very fortunate and got through it in record time. And then I guess as a part of my journey, it was sort of a catalyst for me to go, okay, now what? What is my second act?
Oh, Gina, I'm so sorry to hear that. It's so fortunate that you recovered so quickly and you were ready to take on a second act. You were ready to see what life had to offer you after this breast cancer and surviving. I'm sure you were full of energy and ready to just go out and live life. So you're discovering that staying home with your kids is not your second act. And now you've got all this life left to live. You knew that there was something else you were meant to be doing.
I think I always knew that there would be something, but I did not plan it out. I was pretty much going with the flow. And I actually didn't even think I would go back to work. I think my husband did, but because he's like, I don't want you to get to the end of your life and look back and have regrets. So he was concerned about that because I was such a go-getter in the early part of my career.
What got your wheels turning after that? Did you feel more like, okay, I have a renewed sense of life, a renewed sense of self. Let's start thinking now. Let's start planning what's next.
A lot of my journey is about amazing relationships and the network that I built up. And one of my closest friends, also an amazing entrepreneur, started her own executive search firm. And so she had been asking me, can you come work for me and be a recruiter? And I'm like, I don't really like recruiting that much. That's not my passion. I can do it. But I love to develop programs and I love these other aspects of HR, if you will. And so she lured me back. Oh, come and help me with my branding and my messaging. Come and help me with the interview skills training that I want to deliver inside of my client companies to help train them to craft effective questions and to interview properly and select talent properly. So we did these things over time, but ultimately over the course of about 5-7 years, she wanted me to develop a coaching program or a solution for executives who were in transition. So they would call her up and say, hey, could we go to lunch? Can I show you my resume? Do you have any advice for me? And it's really hard for a small business owner to take 4 hours at a chunk and go and do that, right? She loves doing it, but she couldn't do it all the time. So she said, Gina, can you fix this problem? So I did. I spent a couple months designing and developing, and then we tested and did a beta program under her company umbrella, and that's Talents Group. What I learned in that process, because I was reading books, listening to podcasts, which I love, talking with people, making connections. And I really felt like this was a much bigger program that could be developed. It wasn't just a resume. It wasn't just interview skills prep. And so I spent about 18 months to 2 years then fully fleshing out the program that I have now. And I hired my own business coach to help me get there because I got really stuck. I had been offline for 15 years. I mean, I had email, but I wasn't on Facebook. I didn't know how to build a website. And so I put a significant investment of time and money into myself to take what I had built and then make it to where I could commercialize it.
I love that you decided to bet on yourself and really invest in yourself because it's hard and expensive, but you're right. I always love the term of cut a check to go faster. And by doing that, you're going to move ahead that much faster. Otherwise, you might have been struggling for 24 months, 36 months to kind of get it together.
I was so incredibly stuck and I felt it like in all of my body. Like I was so tense and I was so upset because I had something that I felt was really valid and really different in the market. And I didn't know how to like move the needle and have that evolve into something that was really a viable thing to showcase. And it was a significant investment. I had to go to my husband and say, I've done my research. I've done my homework. I've been following this coach for a year. And I'm going to put it all my chips into that bucket. And he was like, are you sure? I'm like, it's not even a negotiation. I'm telling you what I'm going to do.
Right. Right. You were ready. So This business coach was the best decision you made kind of at that point?
The best.
What kind of things did the coach help you with to get it off the ground?
So what she has is a complete soup to nuts model that starts with your branding. So it's everything from the website development, different sales channel options. How do you build in referral partners, all these micro parts? How do you use social? How do you use LinkedIn? What are the best practices? It has been such a game changer. And then now I've been able to focus on what I love to do, which is doing the coaching. I still have to, continue to build relationships. I have to be present on LinkedIn. That's my main playground because that's where I feel like most leaders and executives are going to hang out. That's where I showcase my thought leadership and provide content that help people, even if they're not going to hire me.
Tell us about your business then.
I developed a model called Career Velocity. The foundation of what I believe to be true for all of us when it comes to clearly communicating our messages is to really understand who we are, understanding our strengths so that we can really get to the point we can articulate our unique value proposition. That's what it's all about when it comes to career transition, but it also is really important for just influencing our relationships with other people, right? And you know this too, being crisp with messaging coming from communication and broadcasting and journalism. So I start with a tool called the YouMap, and it's a career profile that won an Innovator Award in 2020. And it has the top 5 strengths from StrengthsFinder, your top values, your motivated and demotivated skills, and your personality. So what I'm doing on the front end of my process is I'm taking that and I'm extracting all the language that's unique to that person and what matters to them. I'm helping them build the story, and then they're practicing that. I do very intensive interview prep. I work with outside resume writing partners as a part of my program to write professional resumes. And I work with them on LinkedIn profiles, ultimately networking and job search strategies, and helping them build a thought leadership plan so that they don't feel stuck in the future.
Right. Everyone's always stuck in the future, kind of looking ahead. And so to have you to kind of zone them in on what they should be focusing on now so that they can get to that future step has got to be so helpful for them.
I'll even have like a thought leadership component. We'll talk about the topics that they are known, liked, and trusted for so that they can continue to dribble out some form of content. It doesn't have to be a TED Talk. It can be just sharing articles on LinkedIn and making comments. I think the worst thing that people can do is they finally transition and they're like so relieved, and then they just let it all go and they go back to their old habits of like being buried in the organization and not really thinking that I'm a brand and I can showcase my brand in coexistence with my company and elevate my company at the same time. That's what it's all about.
Especially today. And Gina, that is so brilliant that we are a brand, whether we are entrepreneurs like you and I, or we are a part of a company of 500. I don't think a lot of people think of it that way.
You're 100% right. Each person has their own unique story to tell with their own unique professional and life experiences. One of my favorite quotes is by Kristen Sherry, who is the author of YouMap, actually, and it may have come from someone else. I give her credit because that's where I heard it. It's hard to read the label when you're inside the jar. Wow. So when you are trying to put together your story and without that reflective mirror outside of yourself, which I feel like I got with my own business coach, right? Here's all your awesome sauce. Here's how you could say that better. And here's the unique ways that you can tie all your strengths together to explain how you show up in the world. So powerful. People don't necessarily cry when I'm reading their synthesis to them, but they will get emotional. Like they'll take in their breath and go, that's me. That's, yeah.
They're not used to seeing what other people see them as. Basically, what you're doing is showing them what you see in them and having them be able to portray that and bring that vision, that appearance to the world as they look for their next career.
And what's even better is it's all their own words. Like when I do a debrief, I'm typing raw notes and I'm recording it and whatnot. I'm sure you've taken assessments and you read it and you're like, yeah, that sounds like me. But this is different. This is like them telling me, oh, this is how I move people forward with this strength. And I'm using their words. And when they hear it back, they're like, oh my gosh, that's totally me.
Wow.
A lot of times people are in a specific niche and they're making that next transition to either a similar or next level up. So if it's an HR leader, they're not usually transitioning to something really way out of whack with that, or an IT leader or a chief financial officer. They're in their lanes of expertise. But what gets really interesting is when you have someone who's like, yeah, I've been a nonprofit leader my entire career, 25, 28 years, and I really want to go into for-profit, maximizing my upside as my kids go into college so I can help make more money and pay for that. That is different. So now we're aligning not just transferable skills, but there's storytelling to where a for-profit company can hear, oh, you led that big nonprofit. I can see how that's similar to managing a business. So that's where it gets really interesting. So I've had some people want to go from nonprofit to for-profit and vice versa.
That is interesting. So then it's really up to you to kind of decipher that and see what will kind of open the eyes of the recruiter or the hiring manager to see how valuable this client can be.
Absolutely.
Are you working mostly with career execs then?
Most of my clients are at the executive level. I've had a handful that have been otherwise, and it's sort of just who finds me and feels like my program is speaking to them and they're ready for that investment. Some of the people already have a job. They have a job and they're getting ready. Those are people who are more comfortable going through the process because they don't feel desperate. They don't feel worried. Is anyone going to want me? I've also worked with executives who have been given the 6-month package from their company. And they're like, here you go. Here's the standard package we give everybody. And then they hire me, and they're already now 6 to 8 months down the line. And now they're angry. They're disenfranchised. Yep. There's a lot of emotions happening there.
Absolutely. If some of our listeners are kind of in the boat of thinking about leaving to start their next act, should they be looking and doing this self-analysis or joining programs like yours while they're working? Would you recommend that over waiting until the moment is kind of forced upon them?
Each person should be in control of their career as best they can. You can't control that a company is going to have a divestiture, or they're going to acquire a company, and orgs are going to change, and there's 2 of everybody, and somebody lets go and it's you. There's things you cannot control. What can you control? 1, you can control whether or not you have a plan in the first place for your career. That can be fluid. Mine was fluid. Do you have a support system? Do you have a couple of mentors that you can lean on? Those people can be changed out too as you grow your career. Do you have a personal board of directors, or, people that are sitting on your board who have different areas of functional expertise that can help inform you of your career? Making a plan, building a support system. And then the third thing I would say is plan to build in some sort of education or training for yourself. What are you doing to keep your skills current? Not just current, but cutting edge. You're going to get confidence from that.
People just get so complacent in what they're doing that they let all of that go until, the pandemic hits and companies are letting people go left and right. And we've all kind of woken up to the fact that no job is from college graduation to retirement anymore. It really isn't.
No, that's absolutely true. And I do work with a lot of people who have been at their companies or a couple of companies, but that's been like a 20 to 25 year block, sometimes all at one company. That means their network, imagine the world's largest companies. I have a couple in my backyard here in Portland. Mm-hmm. It would seem like the network is huge, but it's huge within one company, within one industry. Yeah. That's not a pervasive network if you need a job, because you can't tap back into that network.
Yep.
Those people all are intertwined with each other. And then you feel stuck, and all of a sudden you feel really badly about yourself because you're like, oh, dang, I didn't expand and meet other people and inform my decision-making for my career, right? And there's so many ways to do this. You're in a company, you can ask, hey, can I go attend, a conference once or twice a year? May I get a certification? Could I get this training? May I lead this initiative? What are these things that you can do to expand?
And really, as much as some people might not like social media, kind of have to be on to play the game, at least on LinkedIn, and kind of keeping those connections. I come from the entertainment industry where everything is freelance. So from the second I graduated college and got my first TV job, it was all about, okay, this job is 3 months and then I have to find my next one. So I got really good at networking and making friends because I had to know people to get my next paycheck after that project. So years later, some of my best friends are people that I worked with right out of college at my first job, and we all still help each other. Mm-hmm. And I think, yes, this was an industry made for networking, but other industries aren't, and they need to be. So what you're saying is so brilliant about attending conferences. Nowadays, you can attend conferences and take programs through the computer and not go anywhere. There kind of is no excuse to not form your network and do that in your free time.
Absolutely. And there's other different ways to make connections with other leaders that are not in your company. I'm working with a chief operating officer right now, and he is a really great writer, good researcher. I'm like, well, why don't you come up with a couple of questions that you have about a certain topic and then go network with the other thought leaders and create a white paper together. Now you're expanding your reach into other people, other companies further out. And when you call them to be a part of that, you're not saying, hey, I'm looking for a job. You're saying, hey, I'm creating something. Do you want to be a part of it? It elevates your brand, elevates that person's brand. And as you collaborate and put it out into the ecosystem, you have concentric circles that they're going to promote it. Now your name is on something.
And your name is just top of mind to so many more people now. Such good advice. So
Thank you.
I love it. I'm like taking it in. So
I got more.
how could my listeners, if they're interested in working with you, how can they be a part of your world?
The first thing that I love to recommend is I recorded a half-hour webinar that is totally free. On my homepage, there's a green button. Click for the free webinar. The first 15 minutes explains why do you need a career transition plan? And I give you a lot of juice behind that so you feel compelled to maybe make one. The second 15 minutes is here is an outline for a plan. And it comes with a workbook. So that's the first step, is go in and see what you feel like might be missing in your strategy. And then once people take a look and listen to that, they can tell that they want to maybe talk with me and have a strategy call. They're like, oh, okay, I can see where this is going.
Yeah. Your background from the second you left college and got your master's and all the work you did with Intel, it's all kind of led up to this. Even the way you manage your household and raising your kids, it's all led you to what you've created now with your business.
100%. Building this program has been completely from the inside out. It is a representation of my philosophy of taking a holistic approach to fill in the blank, ... For me, it's career transitions. And really at the core, goes back to my degree, communicating effectively. My success is when people make that transition that they were trying to make, right? So I'm going to do whatever it takes to get them there.
All right, it's time for our 5 fast cues of the week. Here we go. Name one thing that these different chapters in your life have taught you.
Everyone is unique and has their own story. You have yours and I have mine, and it's all valid and true. And so I would say lean into your story and don't be afraid to showcase that, because that is how people connect with you. And that's how I feel like people have connected with me.
Would you recommend taking a leap into a big life change to your best friend?
I would say yes. And I would put a caveat with support. I believe in having a plan.
What is the one piece of advice that you would give to someone who is trying to start a second act or a career transition?
I'm starting with research, read, listen to podcasts, hold informational conversations, gather information about the jobs you're interested in or whatever that thing is that you want to go do to inform your decision-making process, and build a hypothesis about what it would take to get there. And take a look at perceived skill gaps. All of us are like, well, I could do that job. They just need to talk to me. It's on you to communicate the right messaging so they get it. So you've got to close the gap. Second thing beyond research is allocate time and make a plan. You can dream all day long, but it's up to you to make it a reality. No one's going to make you follow your dream, right? And then play the long game. Don't expect overnight success and celebrate small wins. For me, getting my YouMap certification was like, okay, I got a tool in my toolkit. It's going to add credibility to what I do. And it made me much more confident in what I do. Little things along the way that you need to pat yourself on the back and say, I did something to make progress.
Great advice. What does the next chapter look like for you, Gina?
With my program, Career Velocity, there are a lot of moving parts. I'm constantly fiddling with it, upgrading it. It's not fully fleshed out. So all of my people get most of me one-on-one because they're, it's not there yet. I need to get it on paper, if you will. And that's okay. It'll come. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is I would love to see taking Career Velocity and transitioning that into a book so that people can read like, okay, I see the moving parts. I see more of the details, and bringing in some other thought partners in my ecosystem who have helped me through this journey to bring in their information, elevate their brands as well. So I would love to do that. I don't know when or how.
How can our audience connect with you?
GinaRileyConsulting.com. And then my playground is really LinkedIn, and I'm just Gina Riley. And what I suggest when people are connecting with anybody on LinkedIn, send a personalized connection request. So if you're on your phone, you have to take great care to click the right button to have that pop up to add that personalized connection request. So in this case, if someone wants to connect, it's like, hey, Gina, I heard you on the podcast. But especially for career transitions, you don't want people to just, kind of, okay, that person's connecting with me. I don't get it. Tell them why. Mm-hmm. Hey, you're working at an awesome company. I just want to follow your work and see, what's coming up the pike. Or if it's a recruiter, hey, I want to stay on your radar with the jobs that you post. So if you connect with me, that'll give me a way to do it.
Something so simple.
So simple. It does not have to be hard. And it's super flattering when you mention a podcast, like, I heard you on Second Act Success.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Gina. This was really helpful. I loved hearing your story, and I'm so proud of everything that you've accomplished. This is wonderful. And I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. It was so much fun.
Oh, I just loved my conversation with Gina so much. She is such a go-getter, and she is continuing to help others with her work and her coaching today. If you want to connect with Gina, go to GinaRileyConsulting.com. I will talk to you next time, my friend. Thank you for joining us. I hope you found some gems of inspiration and some takeaways to help you on your path to Second Act Success. To view show notes from this episode, visit secondactsuccess.co. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Reviews only take a few moments, and they really do mean so much. Thank you again for listening. I'm Shannon Russell, and this is Second Act Success.